Alright, gamers, it is Friday again, so it is time to do a silly little magic deck video. I've been sort of away for the last few weeks, so I figured this would be a good time to whip out the new the new format strategy. So today we're gonna do 3 decks in a row, no break or anything like that. So hope y'all enjoy it. The 3 we're gonna be looking at today are these wonderful commanders, as previewed in my video like 3-4 weeks ago now. Um, these are all commanders that I have personal experience with. I don't have online deck lists for any of them up yet, but I will come back to this at some point and put my own personal decks up here. These are 3 commanders that like I play. Like I play them. Um, so I'll try to go over all of them briefly, but hopefully give anyone who's looking to build them some decent ideas. And we're going to start off that by giving my honest impression of them, and that is that they're all really goofy. Like, they're all dumb. They're all really dumb. They can all be really good commanders, which is partly why I like them, to be honest. But they all do kind of similar things. You'll see. You'll see. The first one we're going to go with is Etali, the flip one, aka instant transmission Etali, which is what I like to call him because he might be Gruul, but as you're going to see, he doesn't really adhere to what you'd consider a typical Gruul playstyle. And the reason why is because this man might have some pretty good combat stats with 7/7 trample over 7, but what we're really looking at here is that first ability. On ETB, everyone exiles cards until they exile a spell. You get to cast all of them, any of them, none of them, all of them, whatever you want for free. And the other cards stay exiled. So Etali does have a 9/10 cost sorcery speed transformation to turn him into a miniature Blightsteel, but we're working with the first one primarily. The second one's sort of like a solo bit. Like if you're on your last legs, you transform them, swing them. Basically, if you can't combo off with the first ability, feel free to use the second ability. But this commander deck is going to focus mainly on the second ability. And the second ability is primarily going to focus on infinite combos. Primarily infinite mana combos. We do not really need card draw or tutor aside from that which is necessary in order to build our pieces. The main pieces we have then are going to be Food Chain with either Squee or Eternal Scourge, or it's going to be a Teamer Sabertooth Dockside Extortionist combo, or something similar. Anything that achieves these effects is valid here, but these are the best ones. And the entire plan is, yeah, you just try to assemble one of these 2 combos or use any of the following accessory cards, and you just spam Etali's ability. Exile as many cards from everyone as you want, as you can, cast a bunch of spells, profit. Now, obviously, we can't rely on just 4 cards and getting 2 of those that are compatible with each other in order to actually win the game. So we are going to be looking at a few other miscellaneous cards that do have a similar effect, such as Molten Duplication. Really nice because it does force a sack trigger, but what it also does is create another ETB effect when you target Etali. And this is where I would mention the Twin Flame Dualcaster Mage effect, which lets it go infinite and have its own little ETB thing. A funny thing that I have noticed is if you Molten Duplication Dualcaster, it can also kind of go infinite. And you can do a lot of really dumb stuff with that. It's just a solid secondary combo, but both Twin Flame and Molten Duplication do also work with Etali, so keep that in mind. And then obviously, worst comes to worst, Blightsteel. Just Blightsteel them. It works every time. Can't confirm. But that's Etali. Kind of an aggro. I'd say it's like aggressive mill baiting. And by that, I don't necessarily mean we're just milling them, although we kind of are, but we're also just abusing their libraries. So basically, the better stuff that they have, the better stuff that we get to use. So we're just sort of abusing that. But that's Etali. Next one, similar concept. Mandork's on Trend, aka Selvala. Selvala is really funny because while she has two good abilities, we only care about the second one. The first one is nice, but theoretically, we're going to draw at most a few cards off of that, which is good, especially when we're in green. We need all the card draw we can get, but the second ability is what really matters. So you tap one green, tap her, add X mana, where X is greatest power among creatures you control. Now, how we can abuse that is with these guys. So Phyrexian Soulgorge and Phyrexian Dreadnought have really funny things to them because they both cost very few mana, meaning very easy to cast on earlier turns, and an absurd amount of power, which means that you get to abuse their power mechanics very early on, especially with Phyrexian Dreadnought, although you would have to tap Selvala in response to Phyrexian Dreadnought's sack ability if you cannot uh, actually keep Phyrexian Dreadnought. So it is a little bit of a balancing act between the two, but if you can get it off and have something in hand to use all that mana with immediately, you make bank. You make massive gains early on. It gets fairly easy to close out a game just off of one of these guys, like turn 3 or 4. Obviously, then, speaking of the finishers, we then have Finale, Devastation, Craterhoof, two really solid options for you. I would recommend Galta, as in both the old Ixalan one and in the new Ixalan one, because they're both 12/12s, especially the old one, because it gets super cheap when you have a bunch of different creatures out already. And then the new one is just stonks. An enormous amount of payoff for what you're probably just paying one mana to tap Selvala with the Phyrexian Soulgorger out, and congratulations, you now have one. But either way, that kind of stuff is going to be your outlet. You pair it with like Zopandrel, haste enablers, anything like that, you're going to be good. You just slap chop everyone. And then our big weakness for this deck is card draw, which is where these kind of cards come in. Green has this thing where their card draw is more or less reliant on the creatures that you play, or playing creatures in general, or otherwise just using those creatures. So there are a couple spells in green that will have you draw cards equal to like the highest power among creatures you control. Those ones are good, but we're opting more for an enchantment route for drawing cards. So an exception would be like Beast Whisper, where you just draw a card with creatures, ETBing. But Tribute to the World Tree, things like it. So Garruk's Uprising, any of those cards, ETB, if it has power of like a certain number or greater. Tribute's really good because it's only 3. You just draw a card. Even then, if you can't put counters on it, which is really nice with Selvala, especially because you can actually bring Selvala up to a 4/5 if you cast Selvala with Tribute out. And then stuff like Greater Good, which can be a massive payoff if we're doing stuff like Galta, especially with like a Zopandrel out. So you can just get a bunch of cards, get your game winner, and then just flatline everybody with creatures. So Selvala, super aggro. You want to close out the game basically as early as you can, and it's very much gas or very little gas from what I've seen, but it is really good when it pops off. And the next one we got, for anyone who's watched any sci-fi movie involving aliens and bugs, we got a Sliver special today. I love slivers, so this is gonna be a really fun one. We're doing the first sliver today. First sliver is a really funny card because it comes in Wooburg, which means you get everything. But it's also a tribal commander, which means you get a bunch of bonuses based on, well, what creature type you run. And this one, obviously, the Slivers, 7/7 for 5 mana, pretty good. And then you look at the abilities and you see, oh, we're just casting everything for free, which is awesome. So really, the main plan here is rather simple, because there are a lot of Sliver cards, like a lot of them, and all of them will work with the first Sliver, every single one. So you're going to be wanting to use Sliver Overlord, Sliver Legion, basically every card draw related, mill related, pump related, every single Sliver you can possibly think of. I would recommend Mandork Slivers like Manaweft and Gemhide. Cryptolith Rite is also a good alternative if you find that you're not drawing those two enough. Obviously, I would also include Tutors because you can cascade into cards that aren't Slivers. So including a lot of high value cards that are relatively low cost are going to be massive for you, because that means you have to cast a Sliver. You might not go into another Sliver, but you might go into a spell that's going to get you another piece that you need to win the game. Now, speaking of cascading into things that aren't Slivers, we have another strategy for winning games with the first Sliver. And while it is a lot more toxic and not quite as fun, it is what's going to get you into the higher end of Magic games in general. Not to say that Sliver Tribal is bad, because it certainly isn't. It's really good. But it tends to come up short a lot of the time, especially when you're using First Sliver as a pilot. If you're going to look to use Sliver Tribal as a pilot, I'd probably recommend Overlord, just because it's a little bit more consistent, and you can generally build a better mana base to build yourself up because you're tutoring Slivers. But if we're not going to do that, we just do the Etali strategy, but with the first Sliver. That's it. Food Chain Squee, Temur Sabertooth Dockside, Cloudstone Curio also works for the second line. Replace Atali's ETB with the first Sliver's Cascade, Profit, and then, well, we're not exiling cards off of people's libraries to mill them out and then just storm off, but we have other means to win the game, namely the funny card that does funny things. Yeah, I told you it was toxic, but it works. It just works. So yeah, first Sliver, really solid, regardless of how you play them. Could go tribal or kindred. I think that's what it's called. I don't remember how many times I said tribal this video. Or you just storm out. Either work. But yeah, that's the video. Um, this one was kind of fun because I'm using commanders that I have a lot of experience with, and these are also like kind of pet commanders for me. Um, so I actually really enjoy them, and they're not necessarily just new things that are being thrown at me. But yeah, I know this was a little rushed together, but hopefully it was good. I'm gonna try to see if I can make another one like this with a little bit more thought and time put into it, which will hopefully be a little bit better than this. But I hope you enjoyed this. Hope this gave you some ideas for building some decks, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.